learn data, just association, names.
Yeah.
The reason I'm trying to get, what I'm trying to get at is how to help you best be, understand this information. That's what I'm trying to do. Trying to make sure you get it in a way that's going to be relevant to you. That's what I'm getting at. What helps you to, and that may be different from each individual, but I think there's a collective, uh, like kind of in the middle or something that you go to. When you're studying, how do you learn to tell children in class that you say for the students? What works for you?
I kind of like reading the first line, and then I kind of imagine like looking and go back to
All right. So let's go back and review. What is romanticism? What is romanticism? Cultural movement in the 19th century, which emphasizes imagination and individual expression. What is romanticism? I mean, it's up to you. Read it. Okay. That first sentence, cultural movement in the 19th century, which emphasizes imagination and individual expression. So we all in agreement about that, right? What's something else? Where does it come from? The romance novel. If we just want to simplify, so let's go from, here's another tip. Let's go from taking the broad to simplifying to where you understand. So that's what's going to make sense to you. Let's when we see something, if this helps, I don't know, maybe not. Take what's broad and make it more specific, simplify it. Again, romanticism, cultural movement in the 19th century, which emphasizes what? Imagination and individual expression. So if you saw this on the test, blank is the cultural movement in the 19th century that emphasizes imagination and individual expression, and it includes characteristics such as nature, spirituality and nature, fantasy and supernatural. What would the answer be? If you saw a true and false, it says neoclassicism is the cultural movement from the 19th century that emphasizes imagination and individual expression. It comes from the literary genre, the romance novel. Is that true? If you call multiple choice, it says name the period of music that describes nature and spirituality and nature, fantasy and supernatural, the main mental states of mind. Your choices are: is it the medieval period? Is it the classical period? Is it the Renaissance period, or is it the Romantic period? What is the answer? Is what? Is what? So where's the disconnect? Where we not confident? Where we unsure? Who's confused? If you're confused, let me know. Who's confused? Don't be embarrassed. Who's confused? Because we were kind of slow when I said that means 50% of the players would have got it right, 50% would have got it wrong, because we were a little slow in that last answer. Did you all clear? So let's clear the confusion. What confused you? Because it was a multiple choice? Yes or no? So if you see the statement that says, name the periods of music that includes nature and spirituality and nature, fantasy and supernatural, spirituality and transcendence and revolution. And your choices are: is it A, classical period? Is it B, medieval period? C, Renaissance period? Or D, romantic period? Which one is D? Why?
Because of
Correct. Yes. We're waiting. Yes. I'm seeing, this is where I was talking to my colleague driving in, when I was driving here this morning, and I was telling her I was really concerned. I heard a joke about the teaching 13th grade. And I laughed at it sometimes, but then I thought about it, I said, well, is that true? And it's not true. But in a sense, it is a good thing. Because this is supposed to be the next level of high school, where the expectations are greater. And so, I'm like, if that's the case, we need to go back and these things, bring the level of learning up. And so, I think we need to simplify some things. Because I don't like hearing that too amongst colleagues. Shouldn't be. But I mean, but it's the reason that joke or that stereotype is given is because people don't respect community colleges or technical colleges. And that's not to say that it doesn't have its place, because I do believe it's a bridge to the next level. But at the same time, we got to change that. The way we change that narrative is by understanding that takes some people in your students. So that's why I'm taking the time right now to find out what is going to be successful with this test. Yes, I give you the study guide, but here's the thing. Even with the study guide, you don't know how it's going to appear on the test unless I tell you, oh, here's the question. This is what it is. And that's not good, because that just you just learn it, yes, but you really don't know it for real. Right? Right? Yeah. So when I'm talking in a lecture style or presenting this information, when you're taking notes, I want you to focus on the main key points. Focus on the main points. When I say, okay, pay attention to that, like this previous. When I said on this previous slide, music benefits from technological advancements. So what are those technological advancements? If you saw that on the reading wisdom, what are the technological advancements during the Romantic period that are benefiting? You have innovations and improvements in instruments, which include mechanical valve for brass instruments and added keys less you for wind instruments. The result of this is what? More colorful sounding orchestra, greater range. You see how we worded it to make it even more simple. You see what I'm saying? All right, so let's keep moving forward. Let's go back to this. Culture movement in the 19th century that emphasizes imagination and individual expression. It originates from the genre, the romance song. We have all of that. And then I said, no, some of the characteristics, nature, spirituality, fantasy and the supernatural, extreme mental states of mind, spirituality and transition, revolution, isolation, individualism, depression. Because you don't know how that is going to appear on the
Would that be like past that music art is more of society and social views, and there's more interpersonal, like more.
interpersonally, or looking more inside, that's a big question, and I was thinking that. But we got to think of what's going on during this time. We're kind of at the turn of the century, and think about what's going, especially if you're in history, what's going on at this time in the U.S. and abroad. Yes, yes, good question. Very good question. For everybody's curiosity. Let's keep moving. Literature novel story, for example, and know this FYI, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein perhaps one of the most important Gothic novels of the Roman era. Other notable novelists and writers including Hugo, E. Hall, and Hawthorne. Poetry. These poets of the Romantic era also their work works of inspiration. Four musicians and these children works include Louis Jean of the arts. I'm getting to that later. I believe that is on your study guide. You'll get into during the other so make sure you put the three now that will cover because it's not going fully into it. Because in this one, we're talking about the instrumental part, which is the art side. So, we'll look at something to remind you, sure, that I can make a program. Yeah, don't keep going. Romantic art, Romantic period art themes focus on nature, individuality, and subjectivity, and the realm of fantasy. The literature, poetry, music, and art of the Romantic period were thought to be more unified than ever. Many of the writers, poets, musicians, and artists were close friends, and they say. Nationalism in art. Many artists in the Romantic period used their talents in support of a cause. Napoleonic wars, revolutions, and civil unrest were rampant during the 19th century. Eugene Delacroix painted Glory of Revolution in his patriotic painting in France in the mid-1800s. Spanish painter Francisco Goya was the mission painter of the aristocracy in Spain, but also created art that showed the dark side of war. Goya painted the atrocities of World War II look like from the perspective of the civilian on the bottom left. So nationalism, that's another term we're going to hear. We are going to come back. I think you probably will see that either in the listening or the reading PowerPoint quizzes. But we will, I don't see it now. Yeah, we will come back across nationalism. And really, nationalism is just like the term patriotism, but it's just paying homage to your homeland. We get more into composers like Chopin and others who are nationalist composers. But just to give you a workable definition, we talk about nationalism. Well, it is on my mind. So I think it is. It's the reading PowerPoint quiz and all those lists. Yeah, we're on. You got after. I know it's one of the best reading PowerPoint quizzes you might do. I think the listening quiz is after, but if I'm not mistaken. We'll get to that. I wanted to make a better definition, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Okay, so over the next slide. Okay. Nationalism in music, making music that inspired patriotic pride was a large theme during this period. 19th century conflict between France, US, and Spain encouraged music that celebrated their history and heritage. So really, if I combine that, I would say nationalism can be defined as music making, which inspires patriotic pride, and it's a time in which musicians write music that celebrate their history and their heritage. So again, If I were going to define nationalism, I would define it by saying it is music making that inspires patriotic pride, and it is a process in which musicians write music which celebrates their history and heritage or pays homage to their homeland. Something along those lines. Does that make sense? Now, ways that promote nationalism in music, name pieces after traditional folk dances. That's how Chopin did it. Compose music that's based on stories from their homeland. That's how Grieg did it. Or write triumphant music commemorating victories over the oppression. That's how Tchaikovsky did it. So if you saw a question on the listening quiz or your reading PowerPoint quiz, what are some examples or ways to promote nationalism? Those would be your examples. Does that make sense? I'm going through this slowly because I want you to make sure you get it accurately. Any questions so far? We'll keep going. Some differences between the Romantic era and classical era. So classical music, mostly homophonic, so various, you don't have to know this, but I just want to point some things out. New genres such as the symphony string quartet, we talked about that. There's a use of crescendos and decrescendos. There's question and answer, phrases that are shorter than earlier phrases, new emphasis on musical form. For example, we talk about sonata form, mixed variations, trio, rondo, and first movement concerto form. Greater use of contrast, dynamics, articulation, and tempo. Now, what we're going to discover with 19th century music and Romantic music, lyrical melodies, often with wider beats. Homophonic style is still prevalent, but there's some variation. Larger performance forces using more diverse registers that ranges in timbres, more rubato and tempo fluctuation within a composition. There's more chromatic and dissonant harmonies with increasingly delayed resolutions. Symphonies, string quartets, concertos, operas, and sonata form movements continue to be written. Newly important miniature genres and forms such as the lead and short piano composition. Program music is increasingly prominent. Further development forms virtuosity, and there's no more patronage system. This slide is in your PowerPoint, so you don't have to memorize. Okay? But I just want you to see the noticeable difference between classical and 19th century. So all of that to get into this. So let's talk about the first genre, the character piece. A character piece is a relatively short composition ranging from 3 to 5 minutes, usually written for the piano, where the music expresses a specific mood or non-musical idea. That is the second. What is a character? What is a character? What is a character? And another reason why I'm kind of on your case, so I keep telling you, I don't know what I'm going to be observing. And my meeting was in here this morning, and I'm having to drag and pull and all of that. How do you think I'm going to figure it out? Yeah. She always gonna say, she's gonna say, Teddy, you're doing a great job. You want the best teacher we have. And, she always gonna say that, but just because of the protocol of parents, you don't ever want to call slip, right? Okay. So it's an interaction. If I would come in and I observe the class, which I probably will at some point because I'm being pushed more towards that leadership If I came in and observed a class and I saw the instructor pouring out, the students not responding, how you gonna rate the class? You see what I'm saying? So we gotta, it's a give and take. If you don't understand, say something. If you understand, say something. If you're confused, say something. Don't feel embarrassed because it's not, it's interaction. Got it? Make sense? All right. I know we're kind of going through right now, getting ready for the final exam, but I'm also trying to make it interesting as well, as best as I can. I know a lot of this. So when we talk about the compositions, character piece, short composition ranging 3 to 5 minutes, usually written for the instrument of choice that we use, for example, is the piano. And the music expresses a specific mood or non-musical idea. So you have the romantic composers like Schumann, Chopin, and Mendelssohn wrote character pieces that were inspired by literature, national heritage, and personal experiences. So again, we talk about national heritage, connect that to what? Nationalism. Does that make sense? We see how literature influences a lot of music during this particular time period. When you study English, is anybody taking English? Are you through with your English classes? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So when you were in composition, did you study any, did you have to do any reading of various poems or literature, or was it just mostly writing?
Writing.
All right. Do we recognize any of the works that you had to study, or any of these names of authors, anything like that? Yes, no, maybe so. Who can recall at least one person, or just say somebody that wrote? Yes.
Chopin and the ballad, the first one.
Okay, good. Anybody else? So if you can, it's cool. If you can, it's all right. We're gonna learn more about it.
How do you say the last one?
Chopin.
Chopin's ballad. It's awesome.
Mendelssohn. Yes, Mendelssohn. So
Mendelssohn.
you see nocturnes in
Played one of the
Polonaises.
pieces.
Nocturnes
One of
mean
his pieces, the
like
10th
study.
Symphony
And this
for
is
strings. Schumann cello concerto.
Schumann, Chopin,
It's
Mendelssohn.
nice. I forget I'm up here.
Schumann,
Oh, my phone.
Chopin, Mendelssohn. When I
Just
started
trying it down
studying,
here.
I didn't understand it. So it took me a while to learn. You all are getting at the tip of the iceberg versus when I was taking this picture, because I was like, oh. I didn't. It took me a while to because the joke was always was studying these dead composers, but why would they consider the quote unquote masters of music? And again, we were studying music from the Western European perspective, quote unquote Western European perspective, and its influence on what we do here in the United States. All right. So the first composer that's up is Chopin. Chopin, not Chopin. Frederick Chopin. But as long as you know Chopin, that's all that you do. That's what I'm saying. He's one of the most technically brilliant piano players to ever play the instrument. He wrote almost exclusively for solo piano. He preferred to showcase his talents in the Parisian salons, in the store Parisians, and make a convention. We have heard of salon. Let's put two and two together. What do you think? What is a salon? Okay. Put the word in front of it. Parisian. We're gonna push pause on that. Let's look it up so we can make sure we. Bingo. Bingo. So when we talk about Parisian, the meaning of Parisian is a native or resident of Paris, France, right? Right. So now let's add this. I want to make it make sense. addresses will 15 or 14,
You
okay?
suck.
So now, so this is how, this is a acceptable way of using, if you want to, but AI. You see what I'm saying? Or Google, but same thing. If you can't remember. So now we're gonna say the significance of, I'm gonna show you Chopin and let's see what comes up. I'm showing you how to. So, he preferred these intimate gatherings over large public concerts, giving fewer than 30 public performances in his lifetime. These salons, hosted by elites, offered Chopin a venue for his delicate, emotional, and nuanced style, crucial financial security through private teaching and access to an aristocratic social circles, defining him as a master of intimate salon music. Significance of Chopin in the Parisian salon, ideal performance venue, social and financial security, artistic revolution, cultural nationalism in exile. So let's make them make sense for today. Let's say say we want to say we'll use city wine for an example. That's kind of intimate, right? It's not a large, or unless it's another small venue that you can go on, just use city wine. Okay, and you have a pianist such as Robert Glasper or anybody for that matter, and they want to play, and we'll say, okay, well, we have this like on a Sunday, you know, Saturday, Sunday, we'll say a Sunday, because it's kind of like, you know, late that day. And we're gonna invite a lot of people by having groups from different social circles. You see how you're creating an environment for networking, but you're also making it available to your regular monthly subscribers or patrons, also friends of friends. And you say, okay, as a caveat, we're gonna also have food, hors d'oeuvres, cheese, and wine. You see what I'm going? That's how, if that makes sense. Versus going to State Farm, versus going to Cobb Energy Center, versus going to the stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Or we'll even bring it closer to home up this way. Say somewhere over in Africa. You know, because it's a segment. But that's the best way I can explain it. Does that make sense to you?
Well, why you not here?
Correct. You're getting your hair done. You're getting beautified.
Well, they say you need to get here.
Right. You're getting, as y'all like to say, dolled up. Yeah. I mean, hey, if we're gonna contemporize it, we're gonna go there. Does that make sense? Okay. That's what, and so while you're getting beautified, dolled up, whatever you want to say, manicured, pedicure, you have the music in the background, but you also have all these other things going on. You're socializing, you're networking, you're catching up on what's going on in society. And so that's, you know, as opposed to you going to a big, humongous gathering where it's not really feasible to try to make a lot of connections. Because smaller venues, you have an advantage. Does that make sense?
This is they were like the upper society, word of mouth.
Classical music, romantic music back then,
Sure.
Chopin. That's it.
You're right. Keep going.
He's going to originate this music they play in like the hotels.
Well, the music that they play in hotels, that's curated by different playlists. And so sometimes it may be Spotify or Pandora. He's not, I wouldn't say that he is, I see your point, which is a good question. But if you could say, is it kind of related, kind of sort of, but not necessarily, it's just a framework or a model, if that makes sense. But if you're going to compare to that environment, then I would say yes. Because if you think about it, once you're going in, and that's a good point, when you go and check in and out of a hotel, especially the ones who are more upscale, you hear the background music. And that's really to make your atmosphere, that's a good marketing point. That's to make your atmosphere conducive to your guests. But if you want to trace the origins of that, then I could say yes. You know,
You go to a spa.
okay, that's a yes.
A spa is
That's now you're making the connection. Okay. Do you see how we're finally that was the light bulb. I took what you already know and to make this connection. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I finally got you thinking. It took a while, but that's all right. That's what we want to do. Now, let's go back to the slide. He preferred to showcase his talents in these salons, things he promoting aristocratic women who wanted to learn more about art and music. Okay? Keep in mind, what did he say? He preferred to showcase his talents, preference. Not the church, not the big in front of the kings and queens. We're in a what? Smaller venue. And he prefers to showcase them to whom? Aristocratic women, which meant that these women were either married to. Come on, say it again. Okay, the rich, the famous, the powerful, the okay. Does that make sense? Yes. Yes.
He was wise, he was smart.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
The man was still woman.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Always making pesos.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So now you see, it's a strategy. It's a method to the madness. So he's showcasing his talents to the women who are married. Da, 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 da. He draws inspiration. There's a word again from nationalism in his character pieces. What do we say a character piece was?
Short composition, written him expresses specifically.
Right. Relatively short composition that expresses a specific mood or non-musical idea. Now, his draws inspiration from nationalism. His character pieces. He named his compositions after Polish dances. These dances include marzukas, polonaises, which allude to his Polish heritage. Okay. His nocturnes, which evoke the mood of night, are considered some of his most influential works. And we want to define nocturne, just give you a correct definition. NOC, nocturne, means night piece, and it's an introspective word common in the 19th century office of piano. There goes that word introspective again, which refers back to the connotation or meaning behind what? The Romantic period. You see how all of this is making the connection? Okay. I'm glad the light bulb is finally coming on. Okay. So what we're going to listen to is Chopin Nocturne in E flat major, Opus 9, number 2. I'm going to start 3 8. So, could you imagine see yourself, particularly ladies getting your hair done, or manicure, pedicure while this is playing?
We don't say line dance.
Hmm.
We don't say line dance.
Yes.
I just think about like the ending, where she was dancing, like a piano intro over that in the beginning where she was audition for that ballet. That's what it is.
And you know what, whatever, this is what I'm all about. Whatever helps you to associate and make the connections, nothing is a dumb idea or nothing is irrelevant. Does that make sense? But we're all about what makes sense to you as a learner to do. So if that helps you, that's a good example. I don't know if you all watched this movie, and it made me dating myself. Remember when Prince made Under the Cherry Moon? Okay, I kind of remember, I think about scenes from that movie, comparable to this. Yeah, all right. We're gonna keep going, get one more thing in, and then I think I can stretch your brains enough. Not too much, I don't want to wake up. I can give it to you in small doses. The next thing, so we talked about character pieces, program music. Yes. What is program music? Program music is instrumental music that has a literary or pictorial association. Program music is music that has a literary or pictorial association. Did we talk about program music before?
Wouldn't that be along the lines of a play or a opera?
Yeah. Okay. I thought we did.
Berlioz is too late.
Yeah, when we talked about, we did. Remember when we talked about the Four Seasons evolving? And I said music, but that was I think the other type of music that was not programmed. That's what it was. Music that was not programmed music. But when I said revolving in the Four Seasons spring, that's an example of programming.
And I might have said in the slide,
Yeah,
something about the dance program.
that it did. What were we talking about at that time? It wasn't programming music, it was the opposite of programming. It may have been,
Is that in regards to other movements?
no, not the movement. When we talked about program music, I know I specifically said that. Let me go back. I'm gonna go back to number three. That's gonna be on the line. I got to go back.
The following group for each season will bring examples of programs. Which will become a major genre in the program.
Right. So what were we talking about? It was another type of music that we were talking about at that particular time.
Keyboard music?
It wasn't keyboard music.
It's, where's the Four Seasons in the globe?
That's during the enrollment period, yes, but,
That'll be kind of what second week.
you know what? I mean, no, secular, we still talk about secular and sacred. Those are overarching terms. But I'm getting a little bit more specific. We want to go back. You all forgive me. I gotta make this a connection. Then we're going back because I like to make this connection. I remember when we talked about word painting. Okay. That's program music. When we talked about Vivaldi screen from this is an example of a program. But it was it was another type of style of music that was the opposite of this is what I'm trying to find. Let me go back to this. If I can't find it, I'll leave it alone. You go a lot of this.
We did a lot this year.
Yeah. So, if I can't find it, I'll leave it alone. It was something I wanted to make reference to. Well, I'm going to let that go because I cannot find what I want. But the main thing is, I know we talked about we talked about word and program music. Maybe it was chance music. Maybe that's what we're talking about. Did we talk about chance music? Or music up of chance? We may not have gotten to that yet. We'll get to it.
What do they play program? What do they play program?
In the different genres, it would be for the public, sometimes for the courts. So hold that question, hold that question, come back and make sure that answers. So instrumental music that has literary or pictorial association and examples from the four streams from the Four Seasons of Rome. So it's often accompanied by a program that is given to the audience so that they can experience exactly the story or mood the composer wants them to experience. So it has to be an audience, and so forth and so. It wouldn't necessarily be for a church or a church, but we're talking about the program music more on the entertainment side. So think about secular versus secular, if that makes sense. Did they kind of answer your question? Okay. And still hold that because we'll get into it. So casual listeners enjoyed more program music because it was less psychological, more concrete, program music made instrumental music a little more accessible when it's related to each story or picture. So here are some main period programmatic genres. You got the program symphony, which is a symphony with a program that describes a story through 3 to 5 movements. An example is Symphony Fantastique. You have another genre, symphonic poem, which is a one-movement composition for the orchestra that portrays images of a place, story, or non-musical source, such as Mephisto Waltz, or incidental music, music in a play, or some other presentations of radio, TV, movie, video game that isn't primarily musical. Example of this is the Hall of Sound.
So, something would be considered the best of both of, program music. I mean, symphonic hall music.
Not necessarily Chopin, he would be considered an important composer from the Romantic period in terms of, I want to say nationalism, but I would say best, only because when you say something is the best, that means above all others. And remember, you have several who would be considered the best. It's just like saying, well, what is the best? What is the best hairstyles? Well, it's relative, and we kind of get into objective versus subjective. Does that make sense? Where one is based on opinion, the other is based on data and facts. Does that make sense? So it's all about perspective. So I wouldn't say he was the best. He was one of the most influential or one of the most innovative. But if I say the best, that means the rest of them is trash. You don't want to say that. You see what you see?
Yeah.
We like to say, oh, this is gold. I know sports fans, we hear that back and forth all the time between LeBron and Michael Jordan. And or Kobe, yeah. And so the thing is, well, that's relative because basketball during Jordan's era versus basketball during LeBron's era. Music-wise, Michael Jackson is the greatest entertainer of all time. Well, if you say that he has data to back that up, would you say he's larger than someone now? You know, it depends on who you, and that's why when we start comparing and contrasting, it can get tricky because the reason is if you don't have data to prove it, then it's just like, well, that's your opinion. You know, everybody has an opinion and it's your perspective. But here's the thing, Critical as a scholar, which that's what we are, we're trying to be scholars, learn how to have data to back up what your claim is, so you're just not talking. Does that make sense? So back to Chopin, in your question,
Chopin.
we're talking about the different genres under the programmatic period. We're getting into program music. Remember, Chopin, we kind of connected him to a inheritance. So now we're under program music, which is music associated with a particular poem or pictorial association. Makes sense? Now, the genres program symphony, symphony fantastic, symphonic poem, Mephisto Waltz, incidental music. The last, we're going to go through each one of those as we go along. I think what I want to do, I want to pause right here because I don't want to go too far. I think I should. When we come back off of break, if you do me a favor, since we're not going to have class on Thursday, use this time to go through and read, go back and read the rest of this PowerPoint. But when we come back off break, we're going to pick up right here and finish this one. We'll also go, we'll be on the next module. We're going to kind of make sure we have it and cover it. What I may do, I may back out one of those assignments. Just give us so much time. But I don't want to push through this. I want to